All right. So, chapter 4, we agnostics, which, if you look at the title just by itself, we agnostic. It's not you agnostic. Hey, you fucking agnostic people. You got to believe in God. That's not how they did it. Because Bill was agnostic, and it tells you that over half were agnostic, of the first 100. So, an agnostic is you don't not believe in God, you don't believe in God, it's like whatever, you know. So, in chapter 4, we agnostics, and this is really where it gets to it. If you're coming into AA, it really gets to what this whole deal is, um, and what's suggested we do in the program, through the program, with the program. In the preceding chapters, you have learned something about alcoholism. So we've been talking about alcoholism and drinking. Okay, we've basically up to this point, right? They've given you like the history of AA through the forwards up to present day from 1939 to present day. So history, a little qualification as to why AA became successful early on, authenticity, integrity really won out. Okay. But this is about alcoholism. The doctor's opinion, Bill's story, more about alcoholism. There is a solution where they introduce, but this is more or less like the problem. Okay. I can't stop drinking. What do I do? Okay. Now we're into action, a program of action from here on out, in my opinion, right? That's how I see it. Okay. So, in the preceding chapters, you have learned something about alcoholism. We hope we have made clear the distinction between the alcoholic and the non alcoholic. So, then here's another distinction. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if, when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. So, we hope we've made clear the distinction up to this point. And then here it is again in simpler terms. If, when you honestly want to, you find you cannot quit entirely, or if, when drinking, you have little control over the amount you take, you are probably alcoholic. And they still don't even say definitely. Okay. They say likely you are probably alcoholic. If that be the case, you may be suffering from an illness which only a spiritual experience will conquer. Okay. Hello. So that's kind of where, if we've been tiptoeing around it up to this point, it's plain as day right there. So it's saying, here's the distinction. If you're an alcoholic, you may be, not definite, you may be suffering from an illness, which now, if you are suffering from the illness, only a spiritual experience will conquer it. Not saying you are or you're not. That's up for you to decide whether you are or you're not an alcoholic. But if you are, if you decide that you truly are, the solution is a spiritual experience. Pretty straight. To one who feels he is an atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. But to continue as he is means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives to face. So isn't that a little crazy? If everyone that was diagnosed with cancer right now, if we said, "Hey, we could take all the symptoms of your cancer away and put it in remission. All you got to do is read a book, do 12 things, and live on a spiritual basis, and your cancer's gone. Everybody would do that. But for some reason, when it comes to this illness, that's like people are like, "Whoa, bro, it's a cult. Get away from me with that crazy God shit." And it's like, okay. And that's what this chapter is about, right? So to one who feels he is atheist or agnostic, such an experience seems impossible. A spiritual experience seems impossible if you don't believe in God. But to continue means disaster, especially if he is an alcoholic of the hopeless variety. To be doomed to an alcoholic death or to live on a spiritual basis are not always easy alternatives. So keep going the way you're going, and you're probably going to die. Or we're going to talk about God and spirituality, and we're going to do some things. Okay, that's not an easy decision, and they're admitting it's not an easy decision, but it isn't so difficult. About half of our original fellowship were of exactly that type. So half of the first 100. At at first, some of us tried to avoid the issue, hoping against hope we were not true alcoholics. But after a while, we had to face the fact that we must find a spiritual basis of life or else. Perhaps it is going to be that way with you. But cheer up, something like half of us thought we were atheist or agnostic. Our experience shows that you need not be disconcerted. So you don't need to be put off or worried or turned off by it. Just hang out. We're going to talk about some shit. And if it works for you, great. If a mere code of morals or better philosophy of life were sufficient to overcome alcoholism, many of us would have recovered long ago. So it's saying, like, if just being a better person or having a better philosophy on life were enough, a lot of us wouldn't even fucking be here, bro. Trust me. We would have recovered long ago. But we found that such codes and philosophies did not save us, no matter how much we tried. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. In fact, we could will these things with all our might, but the needed power wasn't there. Our human resources, as marshaled by the will, were not sufficient. They failed utterly. So, therefore, right? Next paragraph. Lack of power, that was our dilemma. We we had to find a power by which we could live, and it had to be a power greater than ourselves, obviously. But where and how were we to find this power? Well, that's exactly what this book is about. So now, right, they've said we've written this book to show you precisely how we have recovered. We've written this book to show you a clear cut directions about what we did to recover. We wrote this book to preserve what we, the first 100, did to recover from alcoholism, is why we wrote this book. Okay. That's exactly what this book is about. What's this book about? This book is about how to find a power greater than yourself, which could benefit anybody, right? Truly, any human being on the planet, that would be a good thing to find a power greater than yourself. That'd be amazing. So you don't even have to be alcoholic, right? You just be like a regular person, maybe struggling and don't know what's going on in the world. But namely, it's going to take driving people to a state of such utter desperation to be even willing to do what's outlined in this book. Okay. Right. So, exactly what this book is about is finding a power greater than ourselves. To nobody, 12933. Thank you very much. You're everybody also at the same time. One is all is one. No body is all body, right? So thank you for that. It's very kind of you. So that's what this book is about. Its main object is to enable you to find a power greater than yourself, which will solve your problem. That means we have written a book which we believe to be spiritual as well as moral. And it means, of course, that we're going to talk about God. Damn it. Here, difficulty arises with agnostics or atheists. Many times we talk to a new man and watch his hope rise as we discuss his alcoholic problems and explain our fellowship, but his face falls when we speak of spiritual matters, especially when we mention God. For we have reopened a subject which our man thought he had neatly evaded or entirely ignored. We know how he feels. We have shared his honest doubt and prejudice. Some of us have been so violently anti some of us have been violently anti-religious. Figuratively speaking, most likely, right? Violently anti-religious. Okay. To others, the word God brought up a particular idea of him with which someone had tried to impress them during childhood. So it brought up this idea of God that somebody tried to like force on you or teach you as a kid. Perhaps we rejected this particular conception because it seemed inadequate. With that rejection, we imagined we had abandoned the God idea entirely. We were bothered with the thought that faith and dependence upon a power beyond ourselves was somewhat weak and even cowardly. We look upon this world of warring individuals, warring theological systems, and inexplicable calamity with deep skepticism. We looked askance at many individuals who claim to be godly. So askance is like distrust, disapproval, suspicion. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Well, yeah, right. So it's saying like we look at the world and all the war and all the famine and all the disease and all the poverty and all the sadness and all the pain and all the misery and all the suffering, and we go, what the fuck are you even talking about? A God, a loving God? Okay. How could a supreme being have anything to do with it all? And then it goes, and who could comprehend a supreme being anyhow? Yet, so this is what we're asking ourselves. That's what they're saying. We've had those thoughts too. Okay. Yet, in other moments, we found ourselves thinking, when enchanted by a starlit night, who then made all this? There was a feeling of awe and wonder, but it was fleeting and soon lost. Yes, we of agnostic temperament have had these thoughts and experiences. Let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results. Even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power which is God. So let us make haste to reassure you. We found that as soon as we were able to lay aside prejudice and express even a willingness to believe in a power greater than ourselves, we commenced to get results, even though it was impossible for any of us to fully define or comprehend that power, which is God. So it's saying, as soon as we were just like, all right, I'll give it a shot. I'll try this higher power shit you're talking about. We commenced to get results, even though, even with the results, we're still not able to explain or comprehend this power that we are calling God. Okay, so you'll hear people in life or that's gone through this process say, God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. Well, can you explain that? They can give you like instances, they can give you crazy coincidences and synchronicities and things that just happen to work out. There's no way to really explain it, but they can't explain God to you. Anybody that says they can explain God to you, I feel like they're a little bit full of shit, you know? They can explain what they think their explanation of, what they believe is the explanation, but they can't, right? So I am still skeptical when anybody's like, this is God right here. Believe this. How do you know, dude? How do you know? I believe you believe what you're saying. Okay. Much to our relief, we discovered we did not need to consider another's conception of God. Our own conception, however inadequate, was sufficient to make the approach and to effect a contact with Him. As soon as we admitted the possibility, or as soon as we admitted the possible existence of a creative intelligence, a spirit of the universe underlying the totality of things, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we took other simple steps. So they're saying, right, as soon as we admitted the possible existence, like you're like, maybe I'll give you 1 in 9 trillion that there's a higher power that is a creative intelligence, a spirit that underlies everything. I'll give you 1 in 1 trillion odds, but I am willing to believe in 1 in 1 trillion odds that there's a higher power that like knows what's going on. Okay. It says, as soon as we were able to do that, we began to be possessed of a new sense of power and direction, provided we did other simple steps. Okay. So, like to say, okay, I'm willing to believe that there's a power greater than me is like step two. So then we have 3 through 12. And that's what they're saying. Provided we took other simple steps. We can't just stop there. We can't expect miraculous results by going, oh, I'll give you that there's 1 in 1 trillion shot that God is something. That's great. You got to do the other simple steps. So they just clarify that. We found that God does not make too hard terms with those who seek him. And again, if the him and the he bothers you, just put another word in that doesn't bother you. You know, that's the way it was written in 1939, right? So, and it's been largely unchanged since then. So if him and he bothers you, then just circle it in the book or make a mental note and replace it with a thing that doesn't bother you. Okay. We found that God does not make too hard of terms for those who seek him. To us, the realm of spirit is broad, roomy, and inclusive, never exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek. It is open, we believe, to all men, meaning all human, right? That's what it means. We believe to all men. So to all of humankind is what the word men means there. When, therefore, we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. And this applies too to other spiritual expressions which you find in this book. Do not let any prejudice you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. As I just said, at the start, this was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which then seemed entirely out of reach. So it's saying, um, at the start, this was all we needed was to not let the prejudice we have against certain terms deter us from honestly saying, okay, well, what does God mean to me? Okay, if I don't like the word Him, then what word works for me if I'm talking about a higher power, this God thing, right? What works for me? And you start thinking about that. They're saying that's all you needed to commence spiritual growth, to affect your first conscious relation with God as we understood Him. Afterwards, we found ourselves accepting many things which at that time seemed entirely out of reach. So, like today, I can very easily digest spiritual ideas or concepts or things that in my early years of moving away from alcohol, I was like, get out of here with that shit. You know, don't talk to me. I don't care about he, him, spirit, Trinity, Holy Spirit. Just come on, dude. Leave me alone with that. I have my own conception of God, and that's great for me. Well, you should come to church with me, Devin, and check it out. Nah, I'm good with all that. You know, please don't ask me to come to church with you ever again, right? Thank you. I have my own conception, right? But as time has gone on, those things don't bother me anymore. Like, yeah, well, maybe I will come check it out, see what's going on over there with y'all over there at XYZ church or synagogue or whatever the hell it is. So as time has gone on, we find that we're more easily able to, accept things that in the beginning were hard for us to even wrap our mind around or consider. And that's all that matters. So that was growth. But if we wished to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception, however limited it was. And that's all it's saying. You don't like the idea of God? Pick your own conception. Choose a conception of God, an idea of God that doesn't bother you. And that'll be yours. And that's where you'll start. And that's all you need, which is a very novel idea at this time, especially. And to anybody that's not familiar with AA and 12 steps and all that stuff, they still, like, I can catch people off guard with that. They go, "What? Do what?" I'm like, yeah, what works for you? Think about it. We needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe? Or am I even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? As soon as a man can say that he does believe or is willing to believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. And there's an asterisk there. And again, it refers you to the spiritual experience appendix in the back of the book. So it's like the third time it's going, read spiritual, go there, check it out. What we talked about, the spiritual experience. So it refers you to that again. This was great news to us, for we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things on faith which seemed difficult to believe. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we say, I wish I had what that man has? I'm not sure it would work. I'm sure it would work if only I could believe as he believes, but I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. So it was comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. So, whatever it is, like all of Christianity, sometimes people are like, I can't, it's hard for me to believe, that a man was God that died and sins and this and born sinner and redeemed. It's just like, doesn't make sense, man. I can't wrap my head around it. We're saying you don't have to wrap your head around that. Okay. It's comforting to learn that we could commence at a much simpler level. Forget all that stuff, man. Do you believe that you are not the supreme ruler of the universe? You are not the supreme ruler of the universe. Yes, obviously, that makes sense. Do you believe that there is a power greater than you? Yes. Okay, that's it. That's all you got to do. Besides a seeming inability to accept much on faith. So again, it's saying like accepting faith, accepting through faith. It means like I got to see it, I got to touch it. Seeing is believing, right? Seeing is believing is the opposite of faith. Okay, so they're saying like we get it. It's tough to accept these things on faith. Like there's a loving creator that cares about you. Well, bro, where is he or she or they, right? Show me them that it. Show me, and then I'll believe. So it's like that's like it's hard to accept things on faith, but they're saying if you're willing to even consider that there is a creative intelligence, a loving creative force that cares about you and your well-being, if you're able to at all accept that, then that's where we're going to start. And that's all you need. Okay. So, besides the seeming inability to accept much on faith, we often found ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness, and unreasoning prejudice. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. Now, I personally know people like that who it's like you see their spikes come out of them immediately, you know. And you go, whoa, okay. They immediately begin to rebuttal and argue, and well, but if that, then this, then that. It's like, okay, never mind. This sort of thinking had to be abandoned. That bristle with antagonism at the mere mention of something spiritual, that sort of thinking has to be abandoned. Though some of us resisted, we found no great difficulty in casting aside such feelings. Faced with alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. In this respect, alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. We hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. So it's telling you, you know, we were in your shoes. We understand, you know, why you're so prejudiced. We understand why you're closed minded. We understand why you don't want to do all this shit. We get it. We were there. Okay. Nothing wrong with it. We're just saying that type of thinking has to be abandoned. Okay. And though some of us resisted initially, we found that, we could cast them aside because faced with like alcoholic destruction, as it puts here in the book, they're like, okay, well, I could like go on down this road in misery and just like poisoning myself to death and in and out of detox jail, crashing cars, parents, loved ones, everybody in misery around me, myself suffering in pain, withdrawal, dependency, no money, lies, spinning my life in a fucking circle down the drain constantly. Or I could say, you know what? Maybe there is some kind of fucking God that gives a shit about me. Perfect. Right there. That's all we need. Let's continue. The reader may ask, the reader may still ask why he should believe in a power greater than himself. We think there are good reasons, and let us have a look at some of them. Okay. The practical individual today is a stickler for facts and results. So, this was written originally in 1939, and it's still very much true today. Okay. The practical individual of today is a stickler for facts and results. Nevertheless, the 20th century readily accepts theories of all kinds, provided they are firmly grounded in fact. We have numerous theories, for example, about electricity. Everybody believes, everybody believes them without a murmur of doubt. Why this ready acceptance? Simply because it is impossible to explain what we see, feel, direct, and use without a reasonable assumption as a starting point. So it's like, well, how does electricity work? I don't know, but there's a light. I can see the light, so I know it works. Well, how does it work? Well, I don't know. It moves through wires and goes from here to there and lights up my room. Yeah, but can you explain that? No, but I know it's real because I can see it. Light on, light off. Okay. Everybody nowadays believes in scores of assumptions for which there is no good evidence, for which there is good evidence, but no perfect visual proof. Does not science demonstrate that visual proof is the weakest proof? It is being constantly revealed as mankind studies the material world that outward appearances are not inward reality. To illustrate, the prosaic steel girder is a mass of electrons whirling around each other at incredible speed. Like this table is, an atom is 90% empty space, they say, right? So, how is this solid? That's what he's saying. These tiny bodies are governed by precise laws, and these laws hold true throughout the material world. Science tells us so. We have no reason to doubt it. When, however, the perfectly logical assumption is suggested that underneath the material world and life as we see it, there is an all powerful, guiding, creative intelligence. Right there, our perverse streak comes to the surface, and we laboriously set out to convince ourselves it isn't so. So we could say this table's solid, right? Because the atoms and the electrons are moving at such a high, intense vibration that it makes it solid, right? Got it. perfect. That makes perfect sense to me. And then somebody says, yeah, and what if there's like a creative intelligence that governs all that and determines what vibrates at what frequency? And you go, shut the fuck up about God. Get the hell out of here with that shit. Okay. Right there, we set out to like painfully disprove that there could be a creative intelligence behind all the wacky shit we continue to prove about reality that we can't fully explain. We read wordy books and indulge in windy arguments, thinking we believe this universe needs no God to explain it. Were our contentions true, it would follow that life originated out of nothing, means nothing, and proceeds nowhere. Instead of regarding ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever advancing creation, we agnostics and atheists choose to believe that our human intelligence was the last word, the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and end of all. Rather vain of us, wasn't it? So I'm going to pause it there, right? Because that's a great point, you know? Well, I'll read this part. We, the first 100, we who have traveled this dubious path beg you to lay aside prejudice, even against organized religion. We have learned that whatever the human frailties of various faiths may be, those faiths have given purpose and direction to millions. People of faith have a logical idea of what life is all about. Actually, we used to have no reasonable conception whatever. We used to amuse ourselves by cynically dissecting spiritual beliefs and practices when we might have observed that many spiritually minded persons of all races, colors, and creeds were demonstrating a degree of stability, happiness, and usefulness which we should have sought ourselves. Instead, we looked at the human defects of these people and sometimes used their shortcomings as a basis for wholesale condemnation. We talked of intolerance while we were intolerant ourselves. We missed the reality and the beauty of the forest because we were diverted by the ugliness of some of its trees. So we'll definitely pause it there, right? Um, which is a great analogy, but he's saying, in the world of science, there's a lot of shit we can't explain. But if like some scientist tells you, oh, well, physics, XYZ, this, that, quarks, neutrinos, and gravity and whatever, like most people go, well, yeah, makes perfect sense. But we can't see it or touch it or smell it or prove it. We're taking the word of a physicist as the truth. And we don't question it. We don't go, well, what the fuck? Prove it, scientist guy, right? But when it comes to, okay, well, what if underneath all the laws of physics, there's a creative intelligence behind all of that? We go, get the fuck out of here with that. God. Okay. So all it's saying is consider that. Consider that there could be a creative intelligence behind it all. If you're even the tiniest bit willing, that's the cornerstone upon which spiritual growth can be built. Okay. And then it even goes further a little bit to say, you know, and let's take it easy on the people of religion. Like we understand that there are lots of frail and flawed people within organized religion. We get that. Humans are fallible. They're not perfect. They fuck up all the time, no matter who they are. But who are we to judge, actually, right? Judging by like based on where we're coming from, we're in this program because we can't stop drinking. We're not perfect either. So maybe we should lay aside our prejudices and consider where some of these people might be right. And we look at people who have lived a spiritual, religious based or church or temple based, life, and we go, why did we just condemn them to like so readily? Why did we reject them? Rather, we should go, well, damn, I wish I had some of that discipline or that dedication or that kindness or that open mindedness. So it's saying, let's also lay aside our prejudices for that as well, right? And let's not miss the beauty of the forest because of the ugliness of some of its trees. If one person in a group of people is a shitty person, that doesn't make the whole group of people shitty. you know? So let's not miss the beauty of the forest because of the ugliness of a few trees. Let's like look at the big picture. That's what it's saying. Let's start to look at the big picture and what's like the net positive that we could derive from these types of things. And it's just this is just a process through we agnostics to kind of gradually kind of chip away at the objections to believing or accepting that there might be a higher power. It's all it is. It's a little sales game that Bill's doing, but it's a good exercise. It's just chipping away at prejudice, right? In any regard. If we're super prejudiced to anything, if we're totally closed minded to anything, any topic, we should ask ourselves, why am I so closed minded to that? Why am I not willing to consider where these people could be correct in some ways or beneficial in other ways? So they're saying, the only in the spiritual experience that it referred to again, right, in the back of the book, it leaves you with this quote, right? There is a principle which is a bar against all information, which is proof against all arguments, and which cannot fail to keep a man in everlasting ignorance. That principle is contempt prior to investigation. Herbert Spencer, right? So that's judging the book by its cover, refusing to investigate and just saying, nah, fuck that. I'm not into that. Don't bring that shit around me. Well, what do you know about it? Nothing. And I don't need to know anything about it. Just don't bring it up again. Well, that's contempt prior to investigation. And what this is asking you to do is just open your mind a little crack like that, little crack, and be willing to consider that there might be a power greater than yourself underlying the totality of things that could relieve you of the obsession for alcohol and relieve you of this obsession to like self destruct and self sabotage. That's it. Do I now believe or am I willing to believe that there's a power greater than myself? That's it. All right. Talk to you soon.